My sister insisted I give my cornea to her daughter, since she's a model. You won't believe what my own sister demanded of me. She wanted a literal piece of my body, one of my corneas. And her reason? Because her modeling career was more important than my quiet life as a programmer. It was beyond insane, and it turned my family upside down. What would you do if your own flesh and blood put a price on your body parts? It all started back in February. My sister, Gina, called me, not to chat, but to demand something unfathomable. Her daughter, Mia, my niece, needed a cornea transplant after a nasty infection damaged her vision. Of course, my heart sank for Mia, but then Gina dropped the bombshell. I needed to be the donor. I was stunned. Naturally, I asked the obvious question. Gina, why aren't you donating? You're her mother. You'd be the best match. She actually laughed. Can you believe it?
Laughed.
Julia, she said, as if I were being ridiculous. I'm a professional model. My eyes are my livelihood. You work from home, a programmer, staring at screens all day. Losing vision in one eye won't affect your income. Your appearance doesn't matter for your job, but my face is my career. My blood ran cold. The sheer audacity. That's insane, Gina. I shot back. You can't expect me to give up my cornea just because you think your eyes are more valuable than mine. But she didn't stop. Oh no. She said I was being selfish. Mia was young, had her whole life ahead of her.
Me?
I was 35, single. You don't need perfect vision to attract anyone, she actually said, like my entire existence revolved around dating. She doubled down. You spend all day looking at computer screens anyway. One eye would be perfectly sufficient for your lifestyle. When I refused, things escalated. She started calling me every single day. New arguments, each more outrageous than the last. Models need depth perception for photoshoots, she'd claim. Programmers can work with one eye. She talked about contracts, obligations to maintain her appearance. And then, the kicker, my husband would leave me if I had any facial surgeries.
But you?
You have nobody to impress. She even brought up my glasses. People already know your eyes aren't perfect, so losing vision in one wouldn't change anything. The cruelty of it all. By March, the pressure campaign went full family. My mother called. Her voice, usually so warm, was tight with a new kind of demand. She told me Gina's modeling career supported her entire family, while I only had myself to worry about. It would be devastating for Mia to watch her mother's career destroyed when a simple solution was available. I should think about what's best for the whole family, not be stubborn about something that wouldn't really affect my life. I asked her, point blank, why she didn't donate. Her answer? I'm too old, and I might not be a good match. Of course. Then my father joined the chorus. He said I needed to step up as an aunt. Gina had sacrificed so much as a mother. I bit back. What sacrifices? She has a nanny, a housekeeper, barely spends time with Mia between modeling gigs. He brushed it off. That's not the point. You're being difficult just to hurt Gina, who you've always been jealous of. Jealous? Of her entitlement? I scoffed. Are you going to donate your cornea, Dad? He quickly retorted that men weren't as good matches for young girls. The excuses were endless. Gina's husband, Leo, even got in on it. He started texting me articles about people living normal lives with vision in one eye. Thousands manage fine, he wrote. You're making a big deal over nothing. Then came the offer. I'll pay you $50,000 for your cornea. Like it was a business transaction. My body for sale. I told him no amount of money would make me give up my body parts for someone who wouldn't do the same. He called me greedy, said I was putting a price on Mia's vision. I shot back. Gina's the one putting a price on it by refusing to donate herself. The harassment took a truly sickening turn when Gina told Mia that Aunt Julia didn't want to help her see again. Mia, my sweet, innocent 9-year-old niece, started sending me crying voice messages. Aunt Julia, why don't you love me enough to help? She'd been coached, of course. Mommy needs her eyes for work, but Aunt Julia just uses computers all day. A child, guilt-tripping me because her mother was too vain to donate her own cornea. That was it. I'd had enough. I decided right then and there to expose exactly how selfish Gina was being. My hands shaking, I called Gina's modeling agency and asked to speak to her manager. I explained the whole situation, carefully. Would Gina really lose contracts for donating a cornea to her own daughter? The manager was horrified. Of course not. That would be discrimination. No client would punish a mother for helping her sick child. In fact, it would probably generate positive publicity and show Gina as a devoted mother. She was disgusted that Gina was using her career as an excuse to pressure others. That manager called Gina immediately. She told Gina the agency fully supported her donating to Mia, that they'd work around any recovery time. And she was disappointed that Gina had lied about career consequences to avoid helping her own daughter.
My phone rang.
It was Gina. You ruined everything, she screamed, her voice shrill with rage. I hung up. Just hung up. I sat there, stunned, for several long minutes. My hands were still shaking as I slowly placed the phone back on my desk. The modeling agency manager had just confirmed my deepest suspicion. Gina was lying. All of it. The career consequences, the contracts, the depth perception, all a calculated lie to avoid donating her own cornea. And now, she was mad at me for exposing her selfishness, instead of being ashamed of her own behavior. I stared at my computer screen, the lines of code I'd been working on a blurry mess. My chest felt tight. I couldn't quite catch my breath. She actually thought I ruined everything by calling her agency. Not that she ruined everything by refusing to help her own daughter. Not that she spent weeks manipulating and pressuring me, but that I was the problem for finding out the truth. About 20 minutes later, my phone started buzzing relentlessly. Text after text from Gina flooded my screen. She called me vindictive, accused me of sabotaging her relationship with her agency. You went behind my back to destroy my career, she typed, when you could have just donated quietly, like a good sister. I read each message, a slow burn of anger building inside me. Every single text revealed her true priorities. Not Mia's vision. Not doing the right thing as a mother. Just her career. Her appearance. Her reputation. I started taking screenshots of every single one. Her rage was doing more to expose her than anything I could have said. 15 texts in the first hour, each one more furious than the last. You're jealous of my success, she wrote. You always have been. You can't stand that I'm beautiful and famous, while you're just a programmer nobody knows. You want to hurt me because you're bitter about your own boring life. That evening, around 7, Leo's name popped up on my screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. His voice was completely different now, no more business-like offers. He sounded tired, worn down. He admitted he didn't know Gina had lied about the agency's position until the manager called her. He thought the career consequences were real. Then he asked, "Are you satisfied now that you've embarrassed my wife?" "I'm satisfied," I told him, my voice firm, "that Mia might actually get the cornea she needs from her own mother." There was a long silence. Then he said Gina was refusing to talk to anyone, locked herself in their bedroom. "That's not my problem to fix," I replied. He sighed, then hung up without saying goodbye. I immediately called Celeste. She picked up on the second ring. I poured it all out. The daily calls, Mom and Dad joining the pressure, Leo's $50,000 offer, Mia's coached guilt messages, the agency call, Gina's lies. Celeste listened quietly. When I finished, she was furious. "I can't believe they tried to convince you your eyes were less valuable because you're a programmer," she exclaimed. "You need perfect vision for coding, probably more than Gina needs it for modeling, considering you work with tiny text on screens all day." She called the whole family pressure campaign crazy and wrong. Celeste then brought up a point I hadn't considered. Why was Gina so resistant to donating if the agency confirmed there were no career consequences? It hit me. I didn't actually know Gina's real objection beyond vanity and fear of surgery. Celeste suggested Gina might have deeper fears about medical procedures that she was hiding behind her career excuses. Maybe she was actually terrified of the surgery itself. That made Gina seem a little more human, a little less like a monster. It still didn't excuse trying to manipulate me, but it was a thought. 2 days after the agency confrontation, my mother called. Her voice was hesitant, completely different from her previous pressuring tone. She said she'd talked to Gina's manager herself to verify everything. She felt terrible about pushing me so hard when Gina had been lying to all of them. She apologized for not believing me when I said Gina was being selfish. But it sounded less like a genuine apology and more like she was sorry she'd backed the wrong horse. Not sorry she tried to pressure me into giving up a body part. Not sorry she thought my career and appearance mattered less than Gina's. Just sorry that Gina had made her look bad by lying. Mom, I said, my voice steady, your apology doesn't address the core problem. You thought it was acceptable to pressure me into donating, regardless of Gina's lies. You believed my career and appearance mattered less than Gina's. You thought my bodily autonomy was negotiable for family convenience. The line went quiet. Then, in a small voice, she said, I need to think about what you said. And she hung up. I sat there, holding my phone, an empty feeling washing over me. Part of me wanted her to understand. Another part knew she probably never would. My father called the next day. Defensive, right from the start. He said I was being too hard on my mother, who was just trying to help Mia. He claimed the whole family was tricked by Gina's career excuse, and now I was punishing them for believing her. No, Dad, I countered. You all believe her because it fit your existing view. That Gina's needs matter more than mine. That her career is more important than my career. That her appearance is more valuable than my appearance. He got angry, said I was twisting everything around. He just wanted what was best for Mia. Then why, I asked, does what's best for Mia have to come from me instead of her own mother? He had no answer. Gina didn't contact me directly for a week after the agency incident. Leo texted occasionally with updates. Gina was meeting with the transplant coordinator, getting medical tests, talking to the surgical team. He never said Gina was wrong. He never apologized for his part. But his messages had an apologetic tone, like this was some accident that just happened, not a deliberate campaign to manipulate me. Then, a call came from Raymond Holt at the transplant center. He asked if I was still willing to be evaluated as a backup donor in case Gina wasn't a suitable match for Mia. I was shocked. Did Gina request this? I asked. Raymond said it was standard procedure to have backup donors identified. My name, he explained, was on the original paperwork Gina submitted weeks ago, before she even asked me directly, before the pressure campaign began. She had just assumed I'd agree once she pushed hard enough. She put my name down like my body belonged to the family, not to me. I need some time to think about this, I told Raymond. He was calm, professional. Take all the time you need to feel comfortable, he said. His voice was a welcome balm after weeks of family members screaming at me. After we hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. The realization hit me with the force of a punch. Gina had put my name down on those forms weeks ago. She never actually asked if I wanted to be evaluated as a backup. She just assumed I'd eventually cave. She treated my body like family property she could claim whenever she needed it. The assumption made me furious all over again. Celeste came over that Saturday with coffee and pastries. I told her everything about Raymond's call, how conflicted I felt. Part of me genuinely wanted to help Mia, who was just a kid caught in the middle. But another part worried that agreeing to be backup would send the message that their manipulation tactics had worked. Celeste pointed out something crucial. Being a backup donor means you'd only donate if Gina medically couldn't. It's not the same as being first choice or letting your family pressure you. If Gina goes through with her donation, like she's supposed to, you'll never actually have to donate at all. It made sense, but I still felt weird. Celeste said that was totally normal, given what I'd been through. She suggested I talk to a therapist. Family manipulation campaigns, she said, weren't standard life experiences friends could fully help with. I spent Sunday searching for therapists specializing in family dynamics and boundary issues. Most websites felt generic, but Miriam Shepard's profile mentioned working with adults dealing with family pressure and guilt. Her office was only 20 minutes away. Monday morning, I called. briefly explaining a complicated family situation involving medical pressure. She had an opening that Thursday. I booked it immediately. I'd never done therapy in my life. My family always acted like therapy was for other people, not us. But this whole cornea situation had me questioning every family relationship I had. I needed someone objective to help me sort through it all. Thursday afternoon, driving to Miriam's office, I was nervous. Her waiting room was calming, soft music playing. Miriam herself looked like a regular person, not some intimidating expert. She asked what brought me in, and once I started talking, everything just poured out. Gina's initial demand, the daily pressure, mom's calls, dad's accusations, Leo's $50,000 offer, Mia's coached guilt messages, the agency confrontation, and now the backup donor situation. Miriam asked detailed questions about my childhood, my relationship with Gina. As I answered, patterns emerged I'd never really thought about. Gina was always the pretty one, her modeling career starting at 12. Our parents treated her work like this precious thing needing protection. I was the smart one, good grades, computer science. Everyone expected me to be self-sufficient, understanding when Gina's needs came first. When Gina needed money for portfolios, my college fund got raided. When Gina needed parental attention for auditions, I was expected not to complain about being left alone. This pattern went back decades, and I just accepted it as normal family dynamics. Miriam used a term I'd never heard, parentification in reverse. Usually, it means older kids caring for younger siblings. But in my family, I was expected to sacrifice for my younger sister because her needs were framed as more important. My role was to be the responsible one who didn't need anything, while Gina was the special one who needed everything. Miriam said my instinct to refuse the donation demand was healthy self-preservation, not selfishness, as my family claimed. She explained I'd spent my whole life accepting that my needs mattered less than Gina's. Finally, saying no was me starting to value myself properly. I actually started crying right there in her office. I hadn't cried through any of this. All the pressure, the manipulation. But hearing someone validate my feelings, confirm my boundaries were healthy, just broke something open. I realized I'd spent 35 years believing that being a good sister and good daughter meant making myself smaller so Gina could be bigger. Miriam handed me tissues. "We have a lot to work through," she said, "but I'm glad you came in." We scheduled another appointment. 2 weeks after the agency confrontation, Leo started texting me updates about Gina's medical evaluation at the transplant center. The testing was taking all day, multiple scans and procedures. Gina was apparently anxious about it, kept asking how much longer. His messages had this tone, like he expected me to respond with sympathy or encouragement. I read each text and put my phone down without replying. I wasn't ready to provide emotional support to someone who'd spent a month trying to manipulate me into surgery. Gina made her choice to donate. Now she had to deal with the medical process. My sympathy reserves were completely empty. Leo sent one more text that evening saying Gina was done, exhausted. Still no response from me. He could comfort his own wife about the consequences of her own decisions. Raymond called me Tuesday morning. His voice was different now, more careful. He explained that Gina's testing revealed she had early-stage keratoconus in her other eye. I had to ask what that meant. He said it's a condition where the cornea thins and bulges outward. Gina's case was early and mild, but it made her a less ideal donor than initially expected. She could still donate to Mia, but there was a slightly higher risk of complications during and after surgery. Because of this, the transplant team wanted to proceed with evaluating me as the backup option. They wanted a strong backup donor ready in case Gina's surgery ran into problems or her recovery didn't go well. A complicated mix of emotions washed over me. Part of me felt vindicated. Gina wasn't the perfect donor she'd assumed when she claimed her eyes were more valuable. But dread also crept in. I might get pulled into this after all. I'd worked so hard to maintain my boundaries, and now there was a real medical reason I might need to donate. I told Raymond I needed 48 hours to decide. He said that was fine. As soon as we hung up, I called Miriam's office, asking for an emergency phone session. Miriam called me at 3 p.m. I explained the new development. She asked how I felt about potentially being needed as a backup donor now that there was a medical reason, not just family pressure. I admitted I felt confused and guilty. Miriam helped me separate Mia's legitimate medical needs from my family's manipulation tactics. She pointed out that I could choose to help Mia without accepting my family's narrative that I was obligated to be the first choice. If I decided to proceed with backup evaluation, it would be my independent choice, made for my own reasons, not me giving in to pressure. That distinction felt incredibly important. I wasn't capitulating. I was making my own decision. I called Celeste that evening and talked it all through again. "What do you actually want to do, Julia?" she asked, cutting through the family drama. When I really thought about it, I realized I did want to help Mia if Gina genuinely couldn't donate safely. Mia was innocent in all this and deserved to have her vision restored. But I needed to do it on my terms. "What would your terms be?" Celeste asked. I thought for a while. I wanted it clear that I was doing this for Mia, specifically, not because I accepted my family's belief that my body parts were negotiable. Everyone needed to understand that if I ended up donating, it was my choice, and not me finally doing what I should have done from the start. Celeste said those seemed like reasonable boundaries. "You've already proven you can stand up to family pressure by refusing for 2 months, she reminded me. Agreeing to backup evaluation now doesn't erase that or make it meaningless. I called Raymond back Wednesday morning. I told him I'd proceed with backup donor evaluation, but I stated clearly, I am doing this for Mia, not because my family pressure me into it. And if I do end up needing to donate, it will be my choice. I will not tolerate anyone framing it as me finally coming around or doing what I should have done initially. Raymond said he understood completely and would note my concerns in the file. He scheduled my evaluation appointments for the following week. After we hung up, I felt oddly calm. I'd made my choice based on my own values, my own reasoning, not family pressure. That felt different. My mother called that evening. Her voice sounded relieved. Leo had told her I'd agreed to backup evaluation, and she wanted to thank me for being reasonable. I cut her off. "Mom," I said, "I'm not being reasonable, and I'm not coming around to your way of thinking. I am making an independent choice to potentially help my niece. That is completely different from giving into family pressure. If I end up donating, it will be because I chose to help Mia, not because the family manipulation campaign finally worked." My mother got quiet. Then, in a small voice, she said she understood the difference I was making. She sounded hurt, but also like maybe, just maybe, she actually did understand this time. She said she was glad I was willing to be evaluated as backup, and that she hoped Gina's donation would go smoothly, so I wouldn't need to. We hung up without the usual family pleasantries. I sat there, tired, but also stronger somehow. I'd maintained my boundaries, even while agreeing to help. That felt like progress. I walked into the medical center the following week, clipboard in hand. Pages of questions about my medical history, surgeries, medications, family health problems. After turning it in, a nurse led me through a maze of hallways to the ophthalmology department. My blood pressure, temperature taken. Then into the first testing room. The eye scans were nothing like regular vision checkups. My head positioned in a machine that felt like sticking my face into a tunnel. Bright lights flashed, equipment whirred. Mapping my corneas, checking for abnormalities. Then another machine, pictures of the back of my eyes, requiring drops that blurred my vision for 20 minutes. The technician asked detailed questions about my computer usage, eye strain, headaches. I explained my dual monitors, regular breaks, feeling oddly defensive about my screen time, even though no one was judging. Next, blood tests. A phlebotomist filled what felt like a dozen vials for compatibility screenings. Finally, the ophthalmologist met with me. She reviewed my results on her computer. Excellent corneal thickness. Remarkable overall eye health for someone who spends so much time looking at screens. You would make a very strong donor candidate if needed. She emphasized the if. Gina was still the primary donor. My role was purely backup. Hearing her describe my eyes as excellent felt strange, a weird validation after weeks of my family implying my vision was less important. The doctor went through potential risks: infection, vision changes, small chance of complications. Cornea donation was generally safe, she stressed, but I needed to understand. I signed consent forms, acknowledging the risks. Left exhausted. The next week, more blood work and a consultation with the surgical team. I sat in the waiting room, flipping through a magazine. When I looked up, Gina walked in, Leo right behind her. Our eyes met across the room. Her face tightened. She immediately looked down at her phone. Leo noticed me, gave an awkward little nod, unsure if he was allowed. Neither came over. Gina found seats on the opposite side, back partially turned. Leo kept glancing, but Gina grabbed his arm, whispered something that made him stay put. The tension was palpable. Other patients probably wondering what the drama was. When my name was called, I walked past them. Gina's eyes were still fixed on her phone. Leo gave another uncomfortable nod. I followed the nurse without a word. Raymond called me at work the following week. Professional, but warmer this time. My test results were back. My corneal thickness was in the ideal range. My eye health was excellent. All blood work perfect for transplant compatibility. You're actually a better match for Mia than Gina is, he said, due to your overall eye health and the absence of any early markers for corneal problems. But he quickly added that Gina remained an acceptable donor and the medical team was moving forward with her as planned. The final decision would be made by the family and medical team together. I asked what made me a better match. He explained my corneas were slightly thicker and healthier, generally leading to better outcomes. He emphasized Gina could absolutely donate successfully, but if comparing purely medically, I was preferred. After we hung up, I just stared at my code, not seeing it. 2 days later, my phone rang. Gina's number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Her voice came through tight and angry before I even finished saying hello. I heard from Raymond, she spat, that you're a better match than me. Are you happy about that? I'm not happy about any of this situation you created, I told her, but I am relieved Mia has good options for her transplant. Gina said the doctors were still using her cornea, and she was going through with the surgery in 3 weeks, almost daring me to argue. That's good, I said. Mia's lucky to have her mother willing to help her. The line went quiet for a moment. I could hear her breathing. Then her tone shifted completely. The anger drained out, leaving something raw, scared. She admitted she was terrified of the surgery, not because of her career or how it might affect her appearance, but because she'd never had any medical procedure before. The idea of someone cutting into her eye made her feel sick. Panic attacks for a week, waking up gasping, barely sleeping, nightmares about it going wrong. For the first time in months, she sounded like an actual human being, not the manipulative person who had harassed me. A flicker of sympathy. Fear of medical procedures was real, valid. Gina, I said, your fear is completely understandable and normal. Lots of people feel scared before surgery, especially eye surgery where you have to be awake and aware. I suggested she talk to the surgical team about anxiety management, medication, techniques to stay calm. She was quiet. Then, in a small voice, she asked, would you consider being the donor instead, since you're a better match anyway? No, I said firmly. You made this choice when you refused to donate initially and spent weeks trying to manipulate me into surgery instead. Now you need to follow through with the consequences of your decisions. I'm not going to rescue you from a situation you created just because you're scared. Your fear is real, but it doesn't change what you did or obligate me to undergo surgery in your place. Gina's voice went hard again. You're punishing me, making me go through with surgery when there's a better option. She accused me of being vindictive, using the situation to get back at her. Gina, I explained slowly, I'm not making you do anything. You are Mia's mother. You created this entire situation by prioritizing your vanity over your daughter's medical needs. The doctor said you can donate successfully, so you're going to donate. Your being scared now doesn't erase the weeks of harassment and manipulation. The phone went dead. She'd hung up on me. I set my phone down, completely drained. My father called the next day. That tone, the one he used when he was about to lecture me about family responsibility. He said Gina was having a breakdown and I needed to step up and donate instead. He rehashed all the same arguments from weeks ago. Single, no one to impress, programmer, don't need perfect vision. I cut him off. Dad, those arguments were offensive the first time you made them. Repeating them now doesn't make them more valid. My body isn't negotiable just because I'm single or work from home. I pointed out that Gina spent weeks claiming surgery would destroy her career. Now that the agency confirmed that was a lie, she switched to being too scared. Her fear is real. I understand that. But her fear doesn't obligate me to undergo surgery instead. She's Mia's mother, and mothers sometimes have to do scary things for their children. He called me cold-hearted and cruel. Said I had changed. Changed? I used to be understanding, willing to help family, he said. Now you're putting your own comfort ahead of your niece's needs and your sister's well-being. No, Dad. I corrected him. I'm putting my bodily autonomy ahead of my family's desire to pressure me into surgery, which is completely different. We argued back and forth until he finally hung up in frustration. I called Miriam and got an appointment for later that week. In her office, I told her about my father's accusation that I had changed. What do you think about that? She asked. I admitted a part of me worried he was right. Maybe I was being cold-hearted by refusing to help when I was the better donor option. Miriam leaned forward. What she said next made everything click. Julia, she began, you haven't changed at all. You've just stopped automatically prioritizing everyone else's comfort over your own well-being. Your family is uncomfortable with this boundary setting because it disrupts their established dynamic where Gina's needs always came first. They interpret your self-protection as you being difficult or cold because they're used to you accommodating whatever they wanted. Your family's discomfort with your boundaries doesn't mean the boundaries are wrong. It means the old dynamic was unhealthy and they don't like having to adjust. I sat there, processing her words. She was completely right. Maintaining these boundaries would mean accepting that some family relationships might not recover, at least not in their old form. My father might always see me as the difficult daughter. Gina might never forgive me for not rescuing her from her own choices. But protecting myself was worth that cost. A week before Gina's scheduled surgery, my phone buzzed. A text from Leo. Can we meet for coffee? I stared at the message for several minutes. Did I really want to sit down with someone who tried to buy my cornea like a used car part? But something in his tone felt different. So I agreed to meet at a coffee shop. When I walked in, I barely recognized him. Leo looked like he hadn't slept in days, dark circles under his eyes, hair sticking up. He stood, gave a tired smile that didn't reach his eyes. We ordered our drinks, sat in awkward silence. Then he started talking. The past 2 months, he said, had been absolute hell. Gina's anxiety had spiraled. Mia kept asking questions no one knew how to answer. The 9-year-old couldn't understand why all the grown-ups were fighting when everyone supposedly wanted to help her see better. Leo rubbed his face. I'm exhausted from managing Gina's panic attacks while trying to keep Mia from feeling responsible. Then he did something I didn't expect. He apologized directly for his role in pressuring me, specifically mentioning the $50,000 offer. He'd been trying to be a problem solver, he said, treating it like a business negotiation where money could fix anything. He looked genuinely uncomfortable as he admitted he'd been completely wrong to turn my bodily autonomy into a business transaction. His apology felt more real than anything my parents had attempted because he took specific accountability for specific actions. I told him I appreciated the apology, that it meant something he understood exactly what he'd done wrong. As we drank our coffee, I found myself curious about something that had bothered me. I asked Leo why Gina was so resistant to the surgery, beyond general fear, since the medical risks were minimal and recovery was quick. He got quiet, staring into his coffee cup. Then he admitted something truly unexpected. Gina had always been scared of anything that might affect her appearance, even temporarily. Not just modeling career scared, but a deep, ingrained terror he didn't fully understand. She'd built her entire identity around being beautiful since she was 12. The idea of facial surgery, even minor eye surgery that wouldn't leave visible scars, threatened her sense of who she was at a level he couldn't comprehend. He tried to talk to her, but she'd get defensive, insisting it was about her career, which was easier to argue about than admitting her true fear. His explanation helped me understand Gina's psychology better, without excusing her behavior. I told him Gina's identity issues and fears didn't justify manipulating me or coaching Mia to guilt-trip me. He nodded. I completely agree. Understanding where Gina's coming from doesn't make what she did okay. I added that maybe this whole experience would force Gina to develop a sense of self beyond her appearance, to realize she had value not tied to her face. Leo nodded sadly. I hope so, but I'm not optimistic. Gina usually blames others when things go wrong. We finished our coffee. I felt I understood the mess better, even if I was still angry. 3 days before Gina's surgery, my mother called, inviting me to a family dinner. I declined. I wasn't ready for an awkward meal. But then Mom said Mia would be there and really wanted to see me. My niece kept asking when Aunt Julia was coming over. I felt trapped. I didn't want to punish Mia for her mother's behavior. So for Mia's sake, I agreed. It would be uncomfortable, but I wanted to maintain a connection with her. When I arrived at my parents' house, the atmosphere was so thick with tension, you could practically taste it. Everyone was overly polite, carefully avoiding any mention of corneas, surgeries, or the massive family fight. Mia ran up and hugged me the second I walked in, wrapping her small arms around my waist. She looked up at me, with her damaged vision. Are you still mad at Mommy? She whispered. I knelt down. Grown-ups sometimes disagree about important things, sweetie. I told her, but I love you very much, and none of this is your fault. She seemed satisfied, pulling me toward the living room to show me a new toy. Dinner was painful. So fake. My father asked about my work with an overly interested tone. My mother fussed over me, offering more food. Gina sat across from me, barely making eye contact, pushing food around her plate, answering in short sentences. Leo tried to keep conversation flowing with safe topics. Only Mia chattered happily, oblivious to the tension. After dinner, Mia pulled me to her room to see her drawings. As we sat on her bedroom floor, she suddenly asked in a small voice, Aunt Julia, are you going to give me your eye since Mommy's scared? I was shocked. She knew these details? What conversations had she overheard? Mommy's going to be very brave and help you, I carefully explained. And sometimes being brave means doing things even when we're scared. Mia nodded seriously. I'm scared too about the surgery, she admitted. That's okay, I told her. It's normal to be scared of things we don't understand. She seemed satisfied, showing me drawings she'd made about seeing clearly again, flowers, butterflies, her family's faces in bright colors. My heart hurt, seeing these hopeful drawings from a kid caught in the middle of adult manipulation. As I was leaving, pulling on my jacket, Gina appeared, catching me before I could escape. I'm sorry for everything that happened, she mumbled. It came out rushed, uncomfortable, like she'd practiced it but didn't really mean it. I could tell someone had told her she needed to apologize, rather than her genuinely understanding what she'd done. She kept glancing towards the living room, like she was performing. I thanked her for apologizing, but didn't say I forgave her. Her face tightened with clear disappointment. She'd expected immediate acceptance, a return to normal. When I didn't give her that satisfaction, she turned and walked away. The day before Gina's surgery, Leo texted me. Gina was at the hospital for pre-op and wanted me to know surgery was scheduled for tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. I appreciated the update. I sent a message back. I hope everything goes smoothly for Mia's sake. I deliberately omitted any personal well wishes for Gina. Leo didn't seem surprised, just sent back a thumbs up, promising to update me. I tried to work the day of Gina's surgery, but couldn't focus. I kept checking my phone. Around noon, Leo texted. Surgery went well. Gina's in recovery. Transplant for Mia tomorrow. A complicated mix of relief for Mia and weird emotions about Gina. I was glad she'd gone through with it, that Mia would get the care she needed. But I was still angry about the months of manipulation, the pressure, the guilt trips. Gina doing what she should have done from the beginning didn't erase all the harm she'd caused trying to avoid it. The next morning, Leo texted updates about Mia's transplant. 7:30 a.m. They just took her back. Surgical team looks confident. I stare at my phone. Hope everything goes smoothly, I replied. 9 a.m. Procedure progressing well. Doctors pleased with how cornea looks. I try to work, but kept checking. 10:30 a.m. Finishing up. Everything went perfectly. A wave of relief washed over me. Mia would finally get the vision correction she needed. Just before noon. Mia in recovery. Prognosis excellent for restored vision. Weeks of recovery, but successful. Genuinely glad she's doing well, I texted back. Hope her recovery goes smoothly. Leo responded with a simple thank you, promising to keep me posted. My mother called 3 days later, with that particular tone in her voice that meant she wanted something. She made small talk, then got to it. Gina's recovery was much harder than anyone expected. Significant pain, anxiety. She was struggling emotionally and could really use some family support. The implication was obvious. She expected me to volunteer to visit, or at least call. I took a breath. Mom, I said very clearly, Gina has Leo for support, plus the nanny and both her parents living nearby. She's not lacking for people to help her through recovery. My mother went quiet. Family support is different, she insisted. Gina's having a particularly difficult time. Mom, I stated directly, I'm not ready to provide comfort to someone who hasn't genuinely acknowledged the harm she caused over the past months. My mother sighed. I understand, she said, though her tone suggested she didn't agree. She ended the call shortly after. 2 weeks after both surgeries, my mother called again. Julia, would you meet me for lunch? Just the two of us. She said she'd been thinking about what I'd said regarding her previous apology and wanted a real conversation about our family dynamics. I was skeptical. Mom wasn't one for deep emotional conversations. But something in her voice was different this time, less defensive, more genuinely uncertain. I agreed. The whole week, I wondered if she was truly ready to acknowledge the problematic patterns, or if this was another attempt to smooth things over. Saturday arrived. I got to the restaurant first, choosing a quiet table. My mother walked in, looking nervous. A tentative smile as she sat down. We ordered, made awkward small talk until our meals arrived. Then, she put down her fork, looked at me with an expression I'd rarely seen. She admitted she'd always treated Gina as more fragile, in need of protection because of her modeling career and beauty-focused identity. She said watching me stand up to the whole family made her realize how much she'd dismissed my needs and feelings over the years. She'd always expected me to be the reasonable one who accommodated Gina's demands without complaint. Her voice got shaky as she talked about realizing she'd participated in making me feel less important than my sister. This acknowledgement felt different. It wasn't about smoothing over conflict, but genuine understanding. Some of the anger I'd been carrying towards her began to soften. My mother asked what she could do to repair our relationship. I appreciated that she was asking, not assuming things could just go back to normal. Mom, I told her honestly, I need you to stop expecting me to sacrifice for Gina's benefit in the future. I'm willing to rebuild our relationship, but it requires you treating both your daughter's needs as equally important rather than automatically prioritizing Gina. I need you to respect my boundaries, even when that means disappointing Gina or making family situations more complicated. My mother's eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She agreed. She wanted to do better. She hadn't realized how much damage the favoritism had caused until this situation forced her to see it clearly. For the first time in months, I felt cautiously hopeful that our relationship might actually improve, with genuine effort from both of us. 3 weeks after the surgeries, Leo started sending me photos of Mia's progress. Smiling face with a protective eye covering, excited messages about how much better she could already see. Updates every few days, showing gradual improvement. The transplant was healing beautifully. Mia could see much more clearly than before. One message included a photo of detailed drawings Mia had made, flowers, butterflies with intricate patterns she couldn't have seen clearly enough to draw before. Leo's text said she was thrilled to see her mother's face properly again, kept pointing out small details she'd been missing. I looked at those drawings, felt genuinely happy for my niece. Whatever complicated emotions I had about Gina and the rest of my family, seeing Mia's joy made everything feel worthwhile. I didn't hear directly from Gina for a full month after her surgery. Leo occasionally mentioned in his updates that Gina had recovered physically, but was dealing with complicated emotions. She felt resentful, he said, that the surgery had been harder and more painful than she expected. He also mentioned she was angry I'd never acknowledged her sacrifice or thanked her for finally donating to Mia. I told Leo very clearly, Gina doing what mothers are supposed to do for their children isn't a sacrifice that requires my gratitude. She spent months trying to manipulate me into surgery, lying about career consequences, coaching Mia to guilt-trip me. Going through with what she should have agreed to immediately doesn't earn her praise from me. Leo went quiet, then sent back a simple acknowledgement that he understood my perspective. My father called 6 weeks after both surgeries with his typical blunt approach to family conflict. Enough time has passed, he said. The family needs to move forward. He wanted to plan a gathering, put this behind us, get back to normal family relationships. I told him I was willing to attend family events, but normal needed to mean something different now. Moving forward, I explained, required healthier boundaries and mutual respect, not just pretending the past months hadn't happened. My father sounded frustrated. You're making things more complicated than they need to be, he grumbled. Everyone had apologized, Gina had done the right thing, so we should just move past it. I pointed out that apologies without changed behavior didn't mean much, and I wasn't going back to a dynamic where my needs were automatically dismissed. He grumbled about me being stubborn, but eventually agreed he'd plan a barbecue, and I could attend if I wanted. 2 months after the surgeries, I drove to my parents' house for the family barbecue. Nervous. Gina's car was already there. Walking into the backyard, I immediately noticed the awkward atmosphere. Everyone overly polite, careful. Gina stood near the grill with Leo, barely glancing my way. My mother hugged me, whispered she was glad I came. Then I heard Mia's voice calling my name. She crashed into me with a huge hug, immediately showing me how well she could see. She pointed at signs across the yard, reading them perfectly, then described tiny details on flowers and leaves she couldn't make out before. Her happiness and excitement were genuine, infectious. Watching her point out everything she could finally see clearly made enduring the awkward family dynamics completely worth it. Later, I found myself alone on the back porch. Gina followed me outside. We stood in uncomfortable silence. Then she spoke quietly. Her modeling agency had actually featured her donation in a publicity campaign about devoted mothers. Positive feedback, good press. Then she admitted, very quietly, that I'd been right about the career consequences being exaggerated. She'd genuinely been terrified of the surgery itself, not professional impacts. Her voice got even softer as she explained she'd never had any medical procedure, and the idea of someone operating on her eye had caused panic attacks for weeks. It was the closest she'd come to real accountability. Not an apology, exactly, but an acknowledgement. I didn't say I forgave her, but I nodded. We stood there a moment longer before heading back inside. I did tell Gina I understood being scared of medical stuff, but that didn't make it okay to pressure me or coach Mia. She shifted her weight, looked down. She wished she'd handled everything differently, especially dragging Mia into it. I nodded again. Over the next few months, I kept my distance from Gina, spending more time with Mom and Mia. My father stopped making comments about my appearance or job being less valuable, though he still got defensive about the pressure campaign. Leo sent occasional texts, checking in, apologizing again, which I actually appreciated because at least he seemed to get why what they'd done was wrong. I started seeing Miriam every other week, working on healthy boundaries while staying connected to the people I cared about. She helped me understand I could love my family without letting them hurt me. I learned to recognize manipulation tactics early, to shut them down before they got out of hand. I could actually feel grateful for what I learned without pretending the situation itself was okay. 4 months after the surgeries, Leo mentioned Gina landed several new modeling contracts, including one featuring her as a devoted mother. The whole thing was ridiculous, considering how hard she fought against donating. But now she was making money off looking like a selfless parent. Leo said Gina almost never talked about the surgery anymore and definitely didn't acknowledge how close she came to refusing to help Mia. During one therapy session, I told Miriam I was frustrated that Gina would probably never understand the damage she caused. Miriam asked me what I could actually control in this situation. I realized I couldn't make Gina learn from what happened, only decide how I responded to her. I decided I was okay with keeping things distant but civil with my sister, focusing more on my relationship with Mia than trying to fix things with Gina. Mia's 6-month checkup came, and the doctor said her healing was perfect. She could see the board at school now, started taking art classes, drawing incredibly detailed pictures. Watching her point out tiny things in her drawings she never would have seen before made me happy. The medical part worked out so well, even if the family stuff was still messy. My mother hosted Thanksgiving. I didn't feel anxious driving over like I used to. I'd made it clear what topics and behaviors I wouldn't accept. And Mom had actually been respecting those boundaries. When my father made some joke about me being the difficult daughter, my mother cut him off. She said I'd been right to stand up for myself. I almost dropped my fork. Gina and I settled into a polite but distant thing. Friendly enough at gatherings, but no hanging out or phone calls. She never actually thanked me or admitted her initial demands were crazy. I accepted this was probably as good as our relationship would get. And I was fine with that. Celeste and I met for coffee. "You seem way more confident," she said. I thought about it. She was right. Standing up to my entire family when they were all pressuring me, keeping my boundaries even when things got ugly, had made me trust myself more. I learned I could handle family disapproval and come out okay on the other side. That was empowering in a weird way. 6 months after the surgeries, I sat at my desk, thinking about how much the experience changed my view of family obligations and bodily autonomy. I was glad Mia got the medical care she needed. Glad Gina eventually did what a mother should do. But I was also glad I refused to let them manipulate me into donating. Teaching my family that my boundaries actually mattered was worth all the temporary conflict and awkwardness. Mom started calling every Sunday afternoon, asking how my week went, actually listening when I told her about the projects I was building at work. She'd ask questions about the code, what problems I was solving, instead of just waiting for her turn to talk about Gina's latest photo shoot. One Sunday, she mentioned she'd been reading about programming languages online, so she could understand my work better. I almost dropped my phone. She also stopped making those little comments about my clothes or asking when I was going to meet someone. Family calls were way less stressful now. Leo texted me photos of Mia reading chapter books, doing detailed coloring projects, showing how well her vision recovered. He'd also send messages complaining about Gina spending 2 hours getting ready for grocery store trips or freaking out about a tiny wrinkle. I kept my responses friendly but short. When he started asking for advice about dealing with Gina's vanity, I finally told him I wasn't the right person to talk to about his marriage, and he should probably find a therapist for that. He backed off after that, sticking to just Mia updates, which worked better for both of us. The elementary school art show was in their cafeteria, student work covering every wall. Mia grabbed my hand the second I walked in, dragging me to her section, bouncing with excitement. She had this incredible sketch of a butterfly with tiny details in the wing patterns that she said she could never have drawn before the surgery because she couldn't see the small parts clearly enough. Gina was there with her phone out, taking constant photos and videos, posting them to social media with captions about her talented daughter. The documentation thing still annoyed me, felt like Gina was making everything about her online image. But at least she showed up and seemed genuinely interested in what Mia created. 8 months after Gina first demanded my cornea, Dad called and asked if he could take me to lunch. We met at a diner. He spent the first 10 minutes making awkward small talk. Then he put down his menu. He owed me a real apology, he said, for how he acted during the whole transplant situation. He admitted he was wrong to say my career didn't matter as much as Gina's, or that my appearance was less important. He'd been thinking about how he always expected me to be the easy daughter who didn't need attention, while Gina got special treatment because she seemed more fragile. His voice cracked a little. He was proud of how I stood up for myself, even when the whole family was against me. It took real strength, he said, that he didn't appreciate at the time. I could tell he meant it. I told him I accepted his apology and wanted to move forward with a better relationship. Gina landed several new modeling contracts, and her agent made her donation story part of her professional brand. She did interviews for parenting magazines, talking about the sacrifice mothers make for their children, and how donating her cornea was the most important thing she'd ever done. I saw the articles online, found the whole thing pretty ridiculous considering how hard she fought against donating. But the positive publicity made her nicer at family gatherings. She smiled more, didn't make as many cutting remarks, probably riding high on all the attention. I never pointed out how fake the devoted mother image was compared to her actual behavior during those months of pressure and manipulation. Sitting at my desk one evening, working on a debugging problem, I realized I didn't feel that burning anger anymore when I thought about February and March. The whole experience sucked, and my family's behavior was wrong. But I learned important stuff about setting boundaries and trusting my own judgment, even when everyone else disagreed. I was way more confident now, less likely to second-guess myself when someone tried to pressure me into something I didn't want to do. The therapy sessions with Miriam taught me how to recognize manipulation tactics early and shut them down. I could actually feel grateful for what I learned, without pretending the situation itself was okay. We had dinner at Mom's house a few weeks later. The whole family, Gina, Leo, Mia. Halfway through the meal, Mia looked at me. "Aunt Julia," she asked, "why didn't you give me your eye like Mommy did?" The table went quiet. Everyone stopped eating, waiting. I explained that mommies and daddies are parents. They have special jobs taking care of their kids, and that's different from what aunts and uncles do. Parents have responsibilities to help their children that other family members don't have the same way. Mia thought for a second, then nodded. I'm glad Mommy was brave enough to help me see again. I agreed that her mother did the right thing in the end. Gina looked down at her plate, silent. December rolled around. I spent New Year's Eve at Celeste's apartment, looking back on how much had changed since February. My relationship with Mom was actually good now, real conversations, mutual respect. Dad apologized, genuinely understood his wrongdoings. Mia and I had a solid relationship, and I got to be part of her life without the weird pressure and manipulation. Gina and I would probably never be close sisters who called each other for advice, but we could be in the same room without tension, and that felt like enough. I protected my right to make decisions about my own body, made sure Mia got the medical care she needed from the right person, and taught my family that I had limits they needed to respect. Standing up for myself when everyone was against me turned out to be one of the best things I ever did, even though it was terrifying at the time. So, tell me, if you were in my shoes, faced with such an impossible demand from your family, what would you have done? Have you ever had to draw a line with loved ones that truly tested your resolve? I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments below.